50%, that's the average turnover year over year for SDRs. It's about 30% for account executives. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to dig into the turnover number and what is voluntarily happening versus what's involuntary. So people that we're choosing to part ways with as sales leaders or people that voluntarily leave. And sales is one of those things that, yeah, I get it, right? It's about as Darwinian as a career can get. But we're going to talk about 5 common mistakes that, in my personal experience, working with dozens of sales orgs in the last 12 months, mistakes that I see that are causing some of this turnover. So before we get to that, my name's Jason Bay. Thanks for checking out Outbound Squad. I really care about helping you and your sales org turn complete strangers into paying customers. So typically what that means is, hey, we're going outbound for the first time, or we're pivoting to a more outbound led sales motion to hit that next level of growth, or we have account executives that need to self-source. Those are typically the challenges that I'm working with organizations to solve. So thanks for tuning in. If you're a sales leader or an SDR leader, you're definitely in the right place. So let's dig into the data. So 30%. This is data from Bridge Group's most recent reports, by the way. 30% turnover in account executives, 50% annual turnover with SDRs. So if we start to break that down, the voluntary turnover, depending on what year you look at and the stats, for account executives, it's about a third to a half of those people choose to leave the sales org. And I don't believe that the majority of that is because salespeople think the grass is greener and they're job hoppers, so to speak, and want to find a better opportunity. I personally believe, and I've worked with companies big and small, so companies with close to 1,000 reps and companies with 3 reps, and everywhere in between. There's 5 common mistakes that I see them making that I want to share with you to make sure that you're not making them. So mistake number 1 is too many internal meetings. This sounds like a really kind of easy one to fix. And I get there's a lot of internal politics with this, but I see a situation where a sales org is starting to grow. They have 50 to 100 reps, and they operate like a sales organization that has 1,000 reps, or they operate like a Fortune 50 company where there's all of this internal stuff and minutia that gets in the way of sellers selling. And it's enablement sessions, product training, all kinds of stuff. And a client that I worked with, literally 7 to 10 hours a week of internal trainings that the reps had to be on. I mean, they're taking almost 20%, 20, 25% of that rep's time. So I think the question to ask is, how does this meeting improve the ROI of our sellers? And if you have a really hard time making a case of this training or this time that we're spending as a group is going to improve the ROI of our sales org, in other words, get them better results, land better meetings, land more of them, land them more repeatedly, close deals faster, bigger, shorter amount of time, etc. With rare exception, let's take those meetings off of our rep schedule. That's mistake number 1, too many internal meetings. Mistake number 2 is lack of training. I see this mostly with outbound, where there's a big internal initiative around PG, pipeline generation, and it's simply there's a activity target that a rep needs to hit, and there's like zero guidance on, hey, when I pick up the phone and I want to run XYZ play for this product into this persona, into this vertical, when the prospect says hello, what comes out of my mouth next besides just pitching my solution? When it comes to crafting an email or looking for stuff to personalize, what are those things? What's the playbook? So if you're expecting your reps to stick around, you need to provide messaging, playbook, talk tracks. Like, this stuff needs to be battle tested. A way that you can make this really actionable is take your best reps, take a handful of them, half a dozen of your best outbound reps, the ones that land the meetings, close the deals from outbound, and document what they do and teach it to the rest of the team. So that's second mistake, lack of training. Third mistake is too many changes too quickly. So I was working with a company. They went from, and they had around 300 account executives, all enterprise and strat reps. They changed the comp plan and they changed the territory structure all in a 3-month period. They went from industry verticalized segmentation to geographic segmentation. So imagine you're a rep selling into retail, Nordstrom's of the world, and you become an expert at selling into these retailers. Now you have retailers pharmaceutical companies, manufacturers, car dealers, and all of these different types of industries that you have to be responsible for being a quasi expert in. That just didn't make sense to me. But doing that at the same time we do in account a shuffle, at the same time that we do a compensation restructure, that just did not make sense. So make sure to, if you're going to make big changes, no matter how big or small your org, like sequence those changes and don't do too much of that at once. They had really bad attrition after that. Fourth mistake, rifts between senior sales leaders. So I worked with another client, and obviously I'm not sharing names of anyone here. There was an SVP who did not get along with the CRO. And I won't get into the details, but those two did not get along. SVP was the one that brought me in. CRO did not like the stuff that we were doing. And this was a long-standing client. I ultimately ended up losing because I wasn't multi-threaded with the CRO. But the entire sales organization, especially the senior folks, the RVPs and folks like that, were very affected by this because it's almost like mom and dad are arguing kind of thing. And they didn't do a lot of this in front of the reps, but there was definitely a riff going on between those two. So don't let stuff like that fester. You got to work it out. And if you're a senior executive, you got to get those people out. Last but not least, terrible comp plans. I worked with a rep, and they were an account manager. And a big part of how they did account management was, as account manager, you're doing upsells, you're doing cross sells, all of that kind of stuff. So they were given 50 accounts, and they had a comp structure where if the customer downgraded and the ACV lowered because the customer downgraded, they were ultimately punished. So imagine they have $1 million quota, and one of the customers downgrades and is no longer spending $100,000, and now they have to hit 1.1 million to hit their quota. They have to make up for that. This was just crazy because a lot of and this is a good sized company with a really good reputation in the space. A lot of the clients that were downgrading were due to just their product becoming inferior to a competitor's. There's all of these little things that they were doing, and their competitors were doing all of those things and then some. So they were losing business, customers downgrading due to circumstances outside of their control. And I've seen this so many times where there are little things like that in comp plan where, for whatever reason, and usually it's not even a technical detail, it's just someone not being paid out, where an enterprise rep doesn't get 30 to 60K of their commissions for whatever reason, or we have a comp plan set up that makes it harder for the rep and penalizes them for things outside of their control. This is going to lead to a lot of attrition. Um, and I'm really curious. That's the list, by the way. So those are the five. I'm looking at the list here. Too many internal meetings, lack of training, too many changes all at once, rifts between senior sales leader, terrible comp plans. I'm really curious. I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a DM or send me an email, jason@outboundsquad.com. I'd love to hear what you would add to this list. And if you're a sales leader, what you would like me to talk about in future episodes. So thanks for tuning in to Outbound Squad. That's all I got for you today. Subscribe, leave an honest review, rating on the podcast, all that kind of good stuff. And we'll see you next episode.